Soldiers of Shoot.
Welcome, troops, to another edition of the Soldiers of Shoot. This is your General Stames, here with my main man, Hollywood Edwards. And Hollywood, Am I wrong about this? Is this the first show that you and I have done together since we started this YouTube channel? Is this the first time it's just Edwards and Stames?
Edwards, Stames. No, inside. Bro, yes, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that this hasn't happened yet.
Well, here we are on a Friday morning, and we are on the heels of a great night for AEW and a show that we did last night. But we started to talk last night about some issues in WWE, and then we didn't want to get off the track from AEW, and rightfully so, because that is what the show was about. We were focusing on AEW. It was their, big night. We didn't want to take from that. But then this morning, a story comes out that fits right into the vein of what we were discussing last night. And I wanted to pick your brain on this. I wanted to dig a little deeper into this. Not real deep, just go into this for a couple of minutes, because I think there's some things here in the weeds that we can learn, having to do with Dean Ambrose, the WWE, and all of that's involved.
Sounds good, buddy. Sounds good.
So, my attention was brought to a podcast, the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast. I wanted to ask you first, were you aware of this podcast ahead of time?
No, I had no idea that these guys go on and talk almost 2 hours about action figures, wrestling figures. I had no idea.
Just to let the fans know, what are we talking about? Who's involved, and what's this all about?
It's Ryder and Hawkins, basically. And I never heard it. Put it on, took it right to the timestamp where Ambrose came in. And interestingly enough, he talks about the fact that they mentioned to him, we do this wrestling figure podcast, and they said, you want to be on it? And he said, F no. And I think I would have the same reaction that Ambrose had, because we've been doing this podcasting thing for a while. If someone came to me with the idea of, let's talk about wrestling figures, I would think to myself, how are you going to do more than one show with that? Well, apparently these guys are living proof that you can talk wrestling action figures till the cows come home. And I think it's hysterical.
Yeah, and after saying the F no, if you will, Ambrose did say that he started thinking about it. And he made the comment, it's easy to forget that you love wrestling and why you started loving wrestling to begin with. And it brought me back to my childhood. So as time went on, and he doesn't say how much time that was, he kind of warmed up to the idea about going on the show. And I'm kind of glad he did, because I thought it was a very fun interview. It's short. I don't know, what is it, about 15 minutes or so? It seemed like
yeah.
Short interview, but a lot of fun. And I don't know, I'm not a wrestling figure collector, but I really did enjoy the interview. And I think that for our fans out there who are listening, it's worth the listen, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it is. And especially if you, I'm not a collector either, but I was a kid that played with wrestling action figures. So they do bring back a lot of memories when they're talking about them. And I think it's hysterical, because the first, I actually jotted that down, that Dean said, you forget how much you love wrestling, which I do want to talk about. I'll circle back. But he's telling the guys his first two action figures, and he's describing the fact that one of the head shrinkers' legs are stuck together, and then you can move them with the arms. And immediately Zack Ryder goes, Series 1 jumper. Series 1 jumper. That's what like, I think that is great. Like, these guys are so into it that they can identify just by a few words exactly what he's talking about. Apparently, it's a Series 1 jumper. That's what it was called.
So apparently, the two figures they had at the store when Dean Ambrose was a child went to get his wrestling action figures was one of the head shrinkers and one of the bushwhackers. And he goes on to say, and this is why the interview is worth listening to, you can hear Ambrose's personality. And boy, what a shame, because when you hear the interview, you realize they could have done so much more with this guy.
Oh, my God.
His mind works in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. And they could have taken advantage of that. But anyway, he goes on to talk about his first two signings were one of the bushwhackers and one of the head shrinkers, which I thought was very funny.
And what did they call that? Did they say kid fed? What was your kid fed?
Yeah.
Dude, I had a kid fed.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and it's great because they were talking about, Ambrose brought up KB Toys.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, just hearing their words, I didn't think I would be into a podcast like that. I think I'm going to start listening to it now, because I remember as a kid going into KB Toys and like, Dad, come on, let me get one. And there was a time, dude, like the WWE guys were like, at one time back in the 80s, they were the big fat rubbery guys.
Right.
And I discovered, and it was before I actually knew that it was a Fed, AWA. I discovered AWA's existence through the toys, because the first pack I got, and it was great because it was the similar price to the single action figure of the WWF guy. The three guys, the Fabulous Freebirds, in one package, and they all had the clothing. Like Michael Hayes had the robe. Terry Gordy had, I think, shorts, and Buddy had a shirt, and they were all glittery and stuff. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, this is so much better than a WWF action figure. So I ended up getting all the AWA guys. I got the AWA ring. It had the red. And dude, listen, I haven't thought about this in years, but thanks to freaking Zack Ryder and his toy podcast, I'm thinking about all this. And it's taken me back to my childhood. The AWA ring had an apron. It was like a felt apron. It was real thin that you can take off. So it covered the plastic, and it had the AWA logo on it. And it had these two like bands, stretchy bands that you wrap around underneath the ring posts. And it was a beautiful piece of toy, bro. I mean, I had hours of entertainment. You know, and Hulk Hogan would come in then and beat up all the AWA guys because I was a Hogan mark, you know. But very cool. Very cool stuff.
Now I'm worried, because I'm wondering, in the future, are we going to hear stories about you and your ring boys who helped you put the ring together?
I would tickle their feet sometimes. I don't know if that's weird, but
I wouldn't say it's weird. Okay, so... And I hate to pull you away from the toy aspect of it
yes,
right
go
now.
Ahead, go ahead. That's
like
not why we're here.
It seems like you're locked and loaded in 1980 right now. So they asked Ambrose what it was like when he got his first action figure came out. And Ambrose called that trippy. He said, when you first make it to WWE, that's one of those things where you're like, I'm going to be in a video game. I'm going to have a toy and everything. And it's like, whoa, it's very cool. He goes on to say, it's still hard to wrap my brain around it sometimes that I'm even in WWE, because you're so used to just talking or walking around and seeing Vince McMahon and Triple H. They're walking around. Like, I'm so used to having conversations with Vince McMahon. It's hard to remember, like, whoa, you were just a kid watching this on TV. It's like, whoa. Now, I'm going to stop there. There's more after that I want to talk about. But, bro, as I'm hearing him say all this stuff, and he's talking about his love for professional wrestling and how this goes back to, I believe he said, when he was six years old.
Yes.
And how he always wanted to be in the WWE and be on the video game. And he wanted to have the wrestling action figure. He went on to talk about all the jobs that he had in the food industry, and he would go from Applebee's to Olive Garden, and he would always get fired because he'd miss work due to, a wrestling show when he was in the indies.
Yep.
Now, we started to touch on this last night, and we kind of purposely walked away from it. But, dude, all this love for the wrestling business, for the WWE, he's gotten to live that and be involved in it, and still he is going to walk away. In your mind, what does that say about him, Dean Ambrose, and about the WWE?
I think it's very interesting. I don't know if, and I'm sure it's like this with anybody else in any profession. You know, sometimes it's not exactly what it's cracked up to be. And now that he's back there talking to Triple H and Vince McMahon on a daily basis, I think he said, I've had countless conversations with Vince McMahon, and you forget like he was the guy on TV that you watched. I think for a lot of those guys, and none of us have been in the business, but you can maybe shed some light on this with a story. But it's almost like, okay, now you're in it. You're observing it from that perspective, and things change. I mean, it's really hard for me to wrap my head around, you know, if I wanted to be a wrestler at a young age and then I got to be. Can you imagine talking to the guy? Talking to Vince. He becomes your boss. He's not Vince McMahon anymore. He's your boss. I think that would throw you for a loop. And maybe it would, you know, if that's the guy that you idolized and now you're taking orders from him on a daily basis, it's almost like it's an alternate reality. You know what I mean? Like, okay, now what do I do with this? Because now I know who this is. I work with him. It's weird, you know?
You know, going back to, you alluded to my brother and I, years ago, a long time ago, when the WWE was the WWF, we somehow, and the story, we'll do the whole story sometime, but we somehow became that big of a pain in the ass in the arena that we were asked to help with the show, primarily to quiet us down and get us under control, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that's great.
And basically what happened is we hooked up with this guy that was responsible for getting the ring up and getting all the barricades set. Now, this was back in the days in the territory era where WWF would come into Hamburg, Pennsylvania, to do 3 tapings on a Wednesday night, and the night before, on Tuesday night, they were in Allentown at the fairgrounds doing 3 tapings there for another show. Remember, they had the 2 shows on the weekend. So,
Yep.
So when you first start doing that, and you know, we had our first day where, you know, we were told, okay, so now next time we have a show in 3 weeks, you're going to show up, but you're going to be 2 hours early or 3 hours. I can't even remember the timing of it. But you're going to be early. You're going to come to this side entrance. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be looking for you. Don't be late. And, bro, we were there probably an hour before that time because there was no way we were going to be late and miss out on this opportunity.
Absolutely. Could you imagine?
Bro, it's so funny because we were paid. It was like, you know, they would tape the 3 hours, but we worked for an hour or two before the show and an hour or two after. They gave us $15 each.
That's
in
awesome.
cash to do this. And, dude, we would have did it for nothing. You know what I'm saying, bro?
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have to give us money. We would have did it for nothing. But here's the part that makes your point, like you said, with Ambrose. It was always, there would be like 4 of us. We were responsible to bring about 4 guys to help. So we would do that. A lot of times it was my cousin Billy. We had a friend Tommy P, I'll call him, from back in the neighborhood that we would take. But sometimes, you know, not everybody was available every time. My brother and I were always available. We centered our lives pretty much around this every 3rd week. So every once in a while, we'd have to, bring another body to help out. And the amazing thing is, like, as we were doing it for, months and then more months and then a year and then over a year, you get used to it. The first time you go in there, you're looking at all the wrestlers and you're seeing the guys with the big feuds playing cards together and you go, what the hell is going on here,
Yes, that's what I alluded to when I mentioned it. Yeah, go ahead.
But as time went on, you kind of get desensitized to all that. You have a job to do. So I'll never forget that when we would bring the new person in, you're constantly having to, tell them, hey, get over here and do this. We got to get this done. What are you doing? Oh, my God, I'm looking over. There's Ivan Putski,
Yeah.
Oh, there's Tony Garea. But for Dean Ambrose, yeah, he always wanted to get to WWE, but once you're there for a while, it gets to be old hat, and I guess reality can set in.
Yeah, you go from being a mark to being a worker. I got to think that's a different world.
So now,
and that applies to a lot of people that, have a dream and then they get to witness some of it, and it's like, okay, this is different. This is not what I had in my head,
It's funny because the old saying is, if you have a passion, never make that passion your job.
Right.
Because one day you will hate that passion.
Exactly. Right.
So, okay, so we look at that from Ambrose's point of view. What about from the WWE's point of view? Here's a guy who, from the time he was 6 years old, wanted nothing more than to be in the WWE, to have the wrestling figure, to be in the video game, to wrestle in WrestleMania. And now you walk over to him, you offer him another contract, which by all stories and all accounts was a very lucrative deal. For 5 years, you're going to set him up for the next 5 years of his life. And he says, you know what? No thanks. If you're WWE, what are you thinking?
If that's me, I'm Vince McMahon, I'm in that chair, I'm thinking, how did I let this guy down? Now, I don't know if Vince thinks that or if he just says, all right, get your ass out the door then. But I think he should be thinking, how did I fail you? You came to this company with dreams, and then you became an employee, and now you don't want to be here anymore. I failed you somehow. I think that would be the appropriate response. How did I fail you? But I'm not sure that's how things work there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that his ego would allow him to take it there. It would be great if he would allow himself to go there, because I think that if he would be more introspective and look inside of himself, I think he could come up with some of the answers and maybe make his product a better product and make the working situation there at WWE a better working environment for everyone involved. Do you have anything else to add about any of that I read so far that struck you?
It struck me just the phrase that he said, you forget how much you love wrestling. Talking to Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins about toys made him say that.
Right.
So he's so far into it. Like, dude, we've seen stories like this before. CM Punk.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
It's so reminiscent to CM Punk. It's, like you said, don't make it your profession. Your passion, your profession. I mean, CM Punk now apparently hates what he loved.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid Ambrose is in the same spot. He's got to get out of it then. If you're miserable, and you got to get out of it.
So what do you see from when he leaves WWE? And, a lot of people thought and still think that this is all just a work. Mm-hmm. It's very hard for me to believe that this is a work.
The Electric City Saint, I still believe that he thinks it is a work. And he could still be right, but boy, oh boy, this is... I don't think so, man. I really don't think so.
So if he does leave, Dean Ambrose we're talking about here, what do you see him doing? Do you see him taking a lot of time off, like 6 months, a year? Or do you see him just going to every little promotion he can at first, just to have the freedom to be able to do that and to be able to create?
I don't know. And it's because a lot of the guys in interviews specifically talking about Ambrose, they say he works in a different way. He's got a different thought process. Much like CM Punk, and I hate to bring it up again, it seems like, I don't know if he's at a spot where he's going to want to go back to the indies and do his artistic work, or if he's just going to pull a CM Punk and say, you know what, I'm just walking away. I'm walking away. I'm young enough. I can go back in 2 years if I want, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. I got to get out of it and just... And if that's the case, what happens then? Does he fall out of love with wrestling, just like CM Punk.
Well, you know how it is. Sometimes if you stay away from something, life catches up to you.
Sure,
And,
right.
And before you know it, you are swamped by life and you never get back to that thing. You are a music guy. And for years and years and years, you were going out and you were performing, you were creating music, you had bands, you got married, you had a child. How many concerts have you done since then?
0.
Case in point.
The other thing about that, too, is, again, the passion becoming the profession. Boy, oh boy, when you're a weekend warrior, you can liken the independent music scene to indie wrestling. Boy, oh boy, the shit that you have to deal with from promoters at indie concerts, the travel, the money you're sinking in and not getting a payback. I'll tell you what, man, it's hard, and my respect goes out to any indie wrestler, any indie musician. It's really hard because you do reach a boiling point, especially when you're dealing with 3, 4, 5 other guys. Man, the stuff that we had to deal with sometimes, it was just not worth it. We would look at each other and go, why aren't we at home? Why are we here? Why are we dealing with this? F this. It's really hard. It's really hard to be able to just keep barreling through, It
really is a labor of love, isn't it?
Yes. That's a good way to say it.
Okay, now let me get to this part. Mr. Ambrose, Mr. Jonathan Good, goes on to say, you guys are like me. There are a lot of people here that are just here for the money. They didn't grow up watching it. They don't care for what they do. They have no artistic care for what we do. But you guys are like me. This is all we've ever loved. This is our thing. These toys are a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, here's the main reason from this little interview that tells me this is not a work. He just alienated 90% of the locker room if he's coming back. And that's going to make it hard as hell on him. If that's the case. He just let us know about all the guys back there that don't give a damn about wrestling. They're there for a paycheck. And you and I have had conversations about this. We've kind of speculated about certain people, and it seems like maybe they're that way. What was your takeaway from this statement from Dean Ambrose?
I took it the other way. Like, at this portion of the show, they were talking about collectors, and they were talking about fans meeting them at the airports, and talking about how, immediately Ryder and Hawkins said, decoys, when the dad sends the kid over for the autograph. And Ambrose mentioned some of those fans aren't in it for the artistic, they don't have the artistic care for what they do as wrestlers. So not only is he alienating the fans, he's alienating the other workers. And, there's always a question in our heads when we're talking about pro wrestling and we're talking about guys like Kenny Omega and Jeff Hardy, the artists in the ring, Nakamura. If we can ask the question, why is Nakamura going to WWE when he knows he's not going to be allowed to paint that picture? And then Kenny Omega comes up. And are we really surprised that he didn't go to the WWE? Maybe to him, it's more important to be able to paint that picture. I think Dean Ambrose, in a nutshell, basically just said it. And he's that guy. So it kind of, for us talking about it constantly, he's kind of justifying that point of view from us. There is an art to it. Some of them do care about the art of it. Some are just in it for the money. And like we said before, if you're in it for the money, great. Do your thing. But there are guys that do place the art of wrestling over the money. And I guess Dean Ambrose is one of them. I think it's safe to say.
Do you think it's possible? And I will say this about Ambrose. I don't think he alienated the fans so much because he did say some great words about the fans, how they were responsible for him being able to do what he does. And by the way, listen to the interview. He tells a great story about how he changes a plane flight to go see, I guess he's talking about going to see Renee, right?
Yeah, up in New York.
So it's like a last minute thing, and he gets to the airport, flying in, and there are fans there, standing there with his merch, asking for autographs, and he goes on to say he signs the autographs, and he's wondering, like, how the hell did I know I was going to be here? And when he was getting his bags, I think he said, over at baggage claim, another fan comes over and asks him for an autograph, and he actually asks him, I'll give you the autograph, keep your $50, but can you tell me something? How the hell did you know I was going to be here? And the guy says, oh, man, we got a whole network of people here, man.
Yep.
Dude, that's incredible to me.
Yeah, I actually know of a guy that does that.
Ay.
And, you know, it's, oh, man, like, oh, jeez. You know,
Bro,
some of those
guys talk. They don't like those. I mean, they said those people ruin it for everybody.
Yeah, and of course, you know, Ambrose was covering the good fans. I mean, don't get me wrong. When you listen, don't let us mislead you. He was putting over the good fans. Mm-hmm. But he said there are guys that will come in the line and they will have a pile of stuff to sign. Listen, if you're going to take advantage of another human being because he's a wrestler, how many autographs is enough? Obviously, they know what you're doing when you bring a pile of shit to get signed. You don't want Dean Ambrose autograph. You want it on 10 different things so you can sell it. It's scummy. Right. They're actual people. Don't forget, wrestling fans. When you meet these people, they're actual people. Okay, so treat them like you would want to be treated. How would you feel if someone walked up to you with a pile of shit and said, sign every individual piece of my pile of shit so I can sell it on eBay? Would you want to be taken advantage of like that? No. I mean, honestly, dude, I'm not into meeting people. I'm not that guy for some reason.
Yeah, me neither.
But I think if I saw Dean Ambrose in an airport, the memory of being able to walk up to him to say, hey, bro, I love what you do in wrestling. You know, thanks for, entertaining me. I think that and maybe a handshake would suffice for me because I would have the memory in my brain that I met Dean Ambrose. I don't need 10,000 signatures in 3 different selfie poses. I don't know what the problem is with people nowadays, but my goodness, can you imagine? Can you imagine what these guys deal with? Seriously.
I can because I've actually seen it. Back when I was doing that with the WWF, my brother and myself, I'll tell you that when we just went to the shows before they hired us, and even in a very early part of us working there, we both had autograph books. We both had pictures, and they were all signed. And I can tell you this, I have not looked at that stuff for 35 years.
Let me ask you this. How old were you and your brother?
I was probably 16.
Okay, and you're much older. 35 years later, are you still doing it?
No, in fact,
that's the difference.
People have asked me if they could see that stuff, and I haven't shown it to anybody because I think I have it somewhere.
You're not sure if you even have it. Exactly.
But I don't know where it's at. I think it's in the crawl space in the attic in one of my collectible boxes where the baseball cards and the football cards are and all that stuff. But it would be a real pain in the ass for me to have to go back there and look for it. So it's not that important to me to go back and look for it. Going back to the Ambrose statement, you said maybe it's more important to him to be able to have that creative care and do that artistic craft. Do you think there's a chance in the case of Kenny Omega, who just signed last night officially yesterday with AEW, is there a chance that Omega, maybe with his past relationships with guys like Shinsuke Nakamura and
AJ,
Doc and Carl and AJ Styles, do you think there might have been conversations where they said, bro, stay away from here?
I don't even think they need conversation. Well, Cody's sitting right next to them, those guys.
Right.
But I don't think there needs to be a conversation because, I mean, I've seen comments with those guys from interviews and even stuff they say on their Being the Elite shows. like I remember seeing one. They were asking Cody about his worst match ever, and he described like a big schmoz fest in the WWE. It was 2-on-2 tag match or whatever, and Omega said the comment like he said something to the effect of, "Yeah, they have finishes there every show that just don't make sense," and he kind of said it like that, like, and he didn't say much else in the interview or on the video. So I mean, if we can see. Like I said, if we can see some of that stuff, I'm sure they can. I mean, it's a decision. You either get the money, you go for the money, or you go for the artistic part of it, in my opinion. And honestly, dude, now that we know Kenny Omega is officially in AEW, if you're an artist like Dean Ambrose, Jonathan Good, if you're an artist like Jonathan Good, what do you want to do? What's on your list? Do you want to go paint a masterpiece with Kenny Omega for 365 days? I mean, that, to me, a guy like that might look at that and say, yep, that's what I want to do. I want to check mark that off my list. I want to go create some art for a year. Let's do it. And that's the thing that Vince needs to realize, dude. There was something that he said very quickly that had nothing to do with what we're talking about with contracts, but I think it can apply to him overall as a person. Was talking about how WWE merch, not only is he on the doll, he's got the doll, he's on the video game. But one of those guys said to him, yeah, I think we figured out, like, you have at least 50 to 100 different pieces of memorabilia that they made of you. And he's talking about how he has boxes. He'll come home from a tour and there'll be 2 more boxes full of toys. He just went into the garage and started throwing things away because he doesn't like clutter. It feels like it weighs him down. And listen, I know I'm psychoanalyzing Dean Ambrose right now, and it's to a point where maybe it's ridiculous. But he said he's cleaning out the garage. He likes to, this is how he said it, I like to cut my ties and go. Now, he's applying that to cleaning out a garage, right? Mm-hmm. Cut my ties and go, which means he's that guy that goes in there and sees clutter and just starts biffing it. Biff. I don't care what it is. Get it out of my face. If I throw something out that I need, I'll get another one. F it. I don't need this. It's sitting in my garage. Cut my ties and go. If he's that way with his garage, and we're all like this, we have our things, you know? We have our daily things, our rituals. If he's like that in a garage, he's probably like that in real life too. Cut my ties and go. If he feels that he's being weighed down like a garage full of clutter in the WWE, he's going to cut his ties and go.
Yeah, and I don't think it is going too far. I don't think you're really, psychoanalysis, whatever. Maybe. But maybe not, because I do think it's somewhat allegorical there that, yeah, isn't that what's happening right now? If he walks out on WWE, why is that? It's probably because he doesn't like all the shit that's weighing him down with WWE. It's time to throw that stuff away. And like you said, cut the ties and go. And it all goes back to that very first sentence. It's easy to forget that you love wrestling and why you started loving wrestling to begin with. And dude, you know what makes it really easy to forget that? 7-digit contracts. But somewhere along the line, somewhere along the way, Dean Ambrose has figured out sometime recently that there's more important things than working for that money and being in the WWE. And I hope for his sake that he doesn't turn into CM Punk. I hope that he goes somewhere and he perfects his artistic craft, because I, for one, think I would really enjoy to see that. Mm-hmm. Anything else to add, Mr. Hollywood Edwards?
Nope, that would be it.
So if you're out there listening, you got the comment section down there. You can make your voice heard. Please do that. Hollywood Edwards is at Blading for Truth on the Twitter machine. You can find me at DJ Stames. The good general is there. Feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to be able to talk to you and discuss some of these things. I guess we're going to get out of here, Hollywood, unless you have anything else to say, my brother.
Nope. Take us home.
Dismissed, maggots.